Hey, Blake, what's the last book you read?
It was a book by a very wise man who picked it out for me to make me smarter, faster, and better.
How come none of those three things ever happened?
I haven't finished the book.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech director out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey guys, I'm Blake Hodges, and I'm the man that knows the least about tech, but talks the most about it. And I'm here with my boss, the founder of Church Gear and consumer of tacos, Toby Walters.
Thanks, Blake. Yes, I do consume a lot of tacos, but we were talking about books in the very beginning, and I'm actually reading a book right now. And Blake, have you ever seen Almost Famous? You like to say that you're a movie critic, but I assume you've never seen that one.
This is me and Toby's favorite game, where I watch every movie he tells me, but then he comes up with another one. I only get credit for the ones I haven't seen. No, I've not seen it.
So Almost Famous, it's a fictional story, but it's based on a real life story of the director was a writer and got hired by Rolling Stone magazine in the late 60s, early 70s, somewhere in there, to follow around a band. And he was just a teenager. And then in the movie, he met this fictional character named Penny Lane. And she was a groupie. Are you familiar with the term groupie?
I am. I've heard some horror stories from some of her other friends.
So this groupie in the movie is actually based on a real life person. And so I'm reading this book about this groupie and all these stories of these bands from the 60s and 70s. So we're talking Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, these kind of iconic bands. And there's one hotel that is infamous on the Sunset Strip, and it was called the Hyatt House. It was a Hyatt hotel, but they nicknamed it the Riot House. And I imagine, Blake, you can guess why. It's because chaos ensued at this hotel. So in the movie, there's this moment where one of the characters, he's in the band, he stands on top of a house, and maybe you've even seen this image, but he stands on top of this house above a large group of people, holds up his hands and says, "I am a golden god."
I'm afraid about what he's going to do next.
So anyways, that again is based on a real moment at this hotel.
Okay.
Where Robert Plant, thank you very much, stood on the balcony of this Hyatt house over Sunset Strip and shouted, "I am a golden god." And there are other stories where John Bonham, their drummer, drove his Harley through the halls of the hotel.
He could fit a car in the hallway?
A Harley, a motorcycle.
I am an idiot.
Yes,
okay.
You are. But we love you anyways. Other things, Axl Rose of Guns N' Roses was on the balcony barbecuing steaks and literally tossing them down onto Sunset Strip.
I've heard other confirmed stories from a source that will not be named that it was very common to throw a TV out the window just cuz.
100%. Same thing there.
But I thought that was extreme, but all of these are worse.
So all of this is leading up to, I'm reading this book, and then Shelly and I, my wife, we actually got to stay at this hotel. It's rebranded. It's called the Andaz.
And did you ride your Harley through the hotel hallway?
I mean, I generally ride a horse through hotel hallways instead of, I just feel it's, more socially conscious. But it was amazing to see the photos in the lobbies of these stars at this hotel and hear the stories. And unfortunately, they have bolted all the TVs down. And the other thing they did is they removed all the balconies and just enclosed them into the room. So there's no balconies anymore. It's come on.
This is a hotel that got turned into a prison.
Pretty much.
All the good stuff was gone. Well, there's going to be some good stuff here today as I introduce our guest.
And I mean, there's going to be some really cool name drops with this guest as well that is going to go all the way back to that same era, 60s and 70s.
There's actually even some guests that I recognize, which is fun for me. So I'm about to bring in our guest, a producer, a musician, an engineer, Ryan Sutton. Ryan, welcome to the Church Gear Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to do our intro for Ryan. All those things are cool, but I got some cooler stuff, some artists and corporations he's worked with. But one of them, Toby, is a lie. Toby, how long have you known Ryan?
I've known him almost a decade now, and I didn't realize he was a liar. But
well, they all are, We're going to lean on you then for what we think this is.
I mean, I'm seeing this list of accolades, and I recognize some, but I certainly do not recognize all.
So I'm going to list them out, and then we're going to have to go on gut and then your prior knowledge with him to guess the lie. So Ryan has worked with, remember, one of these isn't true, artist-wise, Adam Levine, Joe Pesci, Jeff Beck, Frankie Valli, the Jersey Boys, and for King and Country. Then on corporations, he's worked with Crystal Burger, Nike, Target, Academy Sports. I almost said Abraham Lincoln, Ford and Lincoln. All right. So
and going back to Crystal Burger, weren't you just there for lunch?
I
aren't
have
you
a whole
the character that they use for their promotions now?
I've actually got a whole jelly roll devoted to Crystal Burgers. Okay, Toby, you're the Ryan expert in the room. Which
All
of
right,
these?
So some of these I know because I've known Ryan, and also he likes to brag about himself on Facebook. So I see these things,
Always.
and
He seemed so timid when he came in. All right.
so I honestly think you should guess first, Blake, because I can narrow it down a tiny bit.
I've got a hunch. Don't confirm until we say final answer, but my initial hunch is going to be Crystal Burger.
Okay.
Otherwise, looking at
Because
this,
you would have known because you're always there.
I'm always there.
Yes.
Looking at this list, though, I feel like thinking about the era in which these people were famous, I'm going to rule out. Oh, wait a minute. That's Adam Levine. I thought that was Adam Lambert.
And you know who Adam Levine is, right?
I do. That's.
Okay.
I was about to. I thought that was the American
That's like
Idol
the
guy.
one person you've actually heard music from, probably.
Yeah. Crap.
Can you say crap on a Christian podcast?
Turd. I think I'm gonna lock in Crystal Burger in our conversation, and I'm gonna lean on you for now.
Okay. Since we're taking so long on the slide, I'm going to say Adam Levine because I've never heard anything about him working with Adam Levine, but I know he loves, what's Adam's band?
Oh, Maroon 5.
Maroon 5. Sorry.
Oh,
See,
first
I'm
time I
showing
ever-
my
Come on,
age. It's the early onset dementia. I can't remember
we go.
names
Put it on the
anymore,
scoreboard, folks. I had one thing.
but yeah, I'm going to say Adam Levine just because I never heard about it.
All right, Ryan, is Toby a truffle pig and figuring out the lies? Did he hunt that down?
I don't even know what a truffle pig is. But can I?
It's something at Crystal Burger.
No, listen, this is a very sophisticated thing. Truffles are like high-end delicacies that you can't...
No, I've had like truffle fries. I just never heard of a truffle pig.
You can't grow those in a field. I don't know why. And so they have to have pigs go out in random fields and find them.
You might not be able to tell, but Blake is from Smyrna, Tennessee.
This is a high-end food. All right, let's get back on track.
Okay.
Ryan,
Let me
what's
see
the
that
lie?
list real quick.
Okay, Ryan does
You
not
didn't even remember
his,
your own
he
lie.
he's done so much. He can't even remember his own achievements.
Got it. Okay. So who did you say it was?
I'm going to go with Crystal Burger.
Okay, and you're gonna go with
Toby's.
Adam Levine.
Okay, you're both wrong.
I was going to steal credit anyway since he's known you longer if he got it right. Who is it?
Target.
Actually, Target's...
I knew you as a Walmart guy, so that makes sense.
No, I actually quite prefer Target.
Yeah,
and if you
but
had worked
no.
with Target, your wife would just love you because women love Target more than men love football. It's a weird phenomenon.
Okay, so there was one name on this list. I was like, and I remember you talked about this name, but I mean, Blake, do you know who Joe Pesci is?
Yes, and I thought that was an actor.
He is an actor.
Then how did you work with him on like a album?
So that was back in, let's see, we did that. That whole thing started in 2000, I want to say 16 or 17. And Joe has been lifelong friends with my uncle.
Okay.
They kind of ran together as
They
kids,
did.
right?
They did. And
I love
Joe is responsible for introducing Bob and Frankie.
So we don't know who
So-
Bob and Frankie are yet.
Maybe you
so
should've-
Bob. Okay, so my uncle is Bob Gaudio. He was founding member and principal songwriter in the Four Seasons, and of course Frankie Valli was their lead singer.
And for people of Blake's era, because Blake doesn't know anything what you just said.
You know what my era thinks of that as? They think of the hotel because of recent headlines, but you mean the band.
So
I do
name
mean
drop
the
some of these songs because these are iconic all-time songs.
I guess if we're going back to the beginning, it would be Sherry, Walk Like a Man, Big Girls Don't Cry.
You've heard
I
these
know,
songs on.
yeah, hang on. I've seen some movies. I've seen some old movies because of Toby, and I recognize some
I mean,
of
this
those.
is still like Super Bowl commercials. These songs are
Yeah,
on.
there's Oh What a Night, Can't Take My Eyes Off You, Who Loves You, and then so that was Four Seasons stuff. And
so your uncle was the principal songwriter on most
yeah.
of these songs.
I just got some chills.
All of
That
those,
is
all of them.
That's amazing.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. So then
So you're just drowning in royalties, right?
Yes, me personally, yes.
that's
of
how they
course.
write the contracts in America. Only the nephew gets paid.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, what was
that's
it
right.
like working with Joe Pesci, and what was the project?
So Joe did one record back in the, I want to say it was the early 90s. It was right around the time I think he did My Cousin Vinny.
Okay.
And I could be off on the years, but I think it was sometime
With
around
Daniel's son.
there. Yeah. And he had always wanted to do, my understanding is he had always wanted to do a kind of a jazz standards, big band, kind of record. And so I didn't know about the project or anything. And he had hired a producer to do it. And I'm blanking on his name. He's a great guy. He engineered the group, the Yellow Jackets. And they got through with the record, and Joe had done a kind of like a mashup of a few songs that Bob had written. And the amalgamation wound up being called Baby Girl. And
So this Joe Pesci record, it exists, like people can find it on Apple Music and listen to Joe Pesci.
yeah, well, so what I'm talking about now is the current record. The old one he had done was a completely different thing. But yeah, this was released a few years ago.
Because in the early 90s, you were, what, like 4?
10.
Yeah.
So I was born in 81. But so anyways, Joe sends, the song to Bob, and he said, "What do you think?" And, Bob gave his comments on it, and Joe asked Bob if he would work on it because he didn't feel like it was quite right. It wasn't, and Joe couldn't put his finger on it. So, Bob called me and he said, "What do you need?" Because I work with Bob a lot. And I said, well, I mean, if we're going to work on it, I need the multi-track for it. So I was sent the Pro Tools session, and it's very different from the rest of the record, but
You just kind of cutting things up in Pro Tools, adding some different parts, like putting guitars and synths.
So what we wound up doing was that was a crazy thing because
did you have to make Joe more Italian?
No, he doesn't need help with that. He's plenty Italian, and a really, really nice guy. But we wound up, cutting some stuff out, rearranging a couple of things, recording some new background vocals with some gals here in town who are, fabulous and first rate. And the funny thing was, it kind of has like a bit of a salsa kind of Latin feel. And we were working on it, and I asked Bob, it's like, who's playing trumpet? And there's like a little like interlude section throughout the song. I said, who's playing trumpet on that? And he said, well, that's Arturo Sandoval, who's one of the most famous Cuban band leaders, trumpet players of all time. And
you know Arturo Blake, right?
Oh, I hang out with him every month.
Basis,
obviously.
So that song is a duet with Joe and Adam.
Okay, so this is where Adam comes into the story.
That's where Adam comes in. So, and
is Adam as handsome in real life?
Hang on, Adam Levine?
Adam Levine.
Oh, man,
yeah.
I'm so excited to look this up after.
I actually didn't work directly with Adam personally. He recorded everything, all his vocals out in LA.
So you're not texting back and forth like...
No.
So Toby's lie guess was very close. Adam was almost not.
Well, you definitely worked on a track that he was on.
Well, here's the thing. It was that record is on Adam's imprint label.
Ooh.
And Adam wanted to do duets with Joe on it. And they did that one, and they did, I believe, My Sherry Amore, which is the old Stevie Wonder tune. And so Joe basically gave Bob a blank check creatively to just say, do your thing. And we worked on it for a while and sent it off. And it was like, this is so uncharacteristic of the rest of the album. It's like, is this even going to make the album? Mm-hmm. Just because it's a left turn stylistically. And Joe heard it and he freaked. He was in love with it. And we hadn't quite, finished it up or whatever. And we were waiting for Adam's approval because Adam, it's his label and everything. And got the approval from Adam. And this was a few months later because I think Maroon 5 was on tour, so he wasn't even really in a place to be able to listen to it. Finally heard back, and I was like, great. Bob called me and he said, hey, Adam loves it, and I said, great. Let me know when you want to schedule the mix of it and all of that. We'll get it ready.
And what's the name of the song?
It's called Baby Girl.
Baby Girl. Okay.
And Bob said, well, we're done. Adam approved that. So that's the mix that's going to go on the album. And it was weird for me because as a producer as well, my tendency typically is to kind of compartmentalize the production phase and the mixing phase. Bob doesn't do that. It's all one big like gumbo.
So you mixed the track.
I did.
That's a pretty good credit right there.
Yeah, no, it is. And it was part of that made it so fun was that it was recorded super well. And anything recorded really well is always going to be easier and more fun, to mix and master and all of that. But that was a fun project because it was kind of a no rules, kind of thing. And so not only did it wind up making it on the album and staying on the album, it became the first single. And
well, that's super fun.
And Adam did some big social media posts a couple of times and on it. And so that was cool. I wasn't tagged in it or anything, but it was just cool. Like, oh wow.
So did I go to sleep on Facebook for a few months, or did you were like playing it cool? Didn't post about it too much.
I don't post anything I do with Bob.
Okay. It's just that is like
yes.
flexing in front of the mirror selfies that I'm seeing.
Yeah. Well, that's just me being me.
Obviously.
That's, yeah. I got,
Well, with the body of
I got to give my boys some kind of physical role model,
Totally understand.
To model themselves after.
And is Joe like the exact Joe we see in the movies? Is that like, is he acting in movies or is that just who he is? Like,
yeah, he's acting in movies, but
is he still a character in real life? Like,
yeah. Yeah, he is. Very nice, very, very nice guy. I think an element of acting is there is an aspect of it where you find a piece of yourself, so I think, is he
I think that's very accurate.
Is he who he was in Goodfellas? I doubt it,
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But, there's, maybe ways you speak or you interact or,
I mean, Ray Liotta was, but
I mean, he can't be wasting fellas, in real life.
Yeah.
I think we're all scared of Ray Liotta.
That's like saying Anthony Hopkins is actually Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, it's quite possible, but probably not.
Man, that's...
And, okay, Ryan, you just did something recently that you did post on Facebook, and I was like, wait a second, what's happening here? What'd you just recently do?
You talking about Miss America?
Yes.
Yeah. That is a pretty crazy situation as well. There's a good friend of mine. His name's Frank Byers, and he has been involved throughout his life and in varying capacities in not only the competitive like cheerleading world, like at the
so is Blake
collegiate level.
Surprisedly.
Well, my high school won multiple national championships for it, so that's as close as I can get.
So he did that, and a lot of coaching and choreographing, if that's a word.
If you say it with confidence, it's a word.
And then he got involved because of that. He's from Arkansas, and my understanding is he got involved with the business end of that type of organization, that type of pageant or competition. And anyway, so I'd known him for a long time as a worship leader at a church I used to go to, and he and I are friends. So he calls me and he says, "Hey, what are you doing next week?" This is back in December, just a couple of months ago.
And you're like watching Miss America on TV.
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly. So
no,
I was
Covenant Eyes works on television.
I said, "Well, what are you asking me? Like, what are you actually asking me? As opposed to just what am I doing next week?" And he said, "I need someone to run the live stream mix for Miss America that's going to be going out through Peacock, the NBC streaming app."
Was it live on NBC or they just...
It was live on, I think, just Peacock.
Okay.
So it's live and being cataloged forever on a massive streaming service.
Yeah. So I said, "Frank, I respect you too much to not tell you this." I said, "I've done re-record mixes, which is mixes after the fact of things that have, gone on streaming, but I've never done it live." And so I said, "You just need to be aware of that." And he said, "If you have a full-time assistant who works there and who knows all the equipment and everything, and how it's all patched and everything. Do you think you can do it? And I said,
You said, what does it pay?
I said, well, yes, I did ask that because obviously it's a business and it's important. And I said, give me 12 hours and I'll get you an answer. And I really had to think on it.
What did you do for 12 hours?
Sit on it.
Did you go out to Joshua Tree and have one of these moments?
He discussed it with his wife to see if he was allowed to do this.
So I did some personal consulting with people who I really respect and who have mentored me in varying capacities. And one of them was Bob that I called. And then the other one was a lady here in town named Terry Brown, who's a manager, and she's been a concert promoter. She did the Beatles, and I think she managed Merle
Never
for a
heard
while.
of him.
And anyway, she was at Budweiser for years as a
Heard of that?
Part of the, I think, connecting like rodeo and Budweiser and all. Anyways, so I talked with her and I talked with Bob, and I did talk with my wife, Melanie, and they all said, go do it. Just do it. And that was where I was leaning. And sometimes you just need a bit of an outside push.
So how was the balance between the stress of the situation and just like the fun?
So the best,
Miss America.
I roll in and I can't get into why, but me, the front of house for the arena, the sound guy for the arena.
Was this at Bridgestone?
No, this is in Connecticut.
Okay.
So this was at a place called Mohegan Sun, I guess, where they've been having this for the past several years. It's a big casino and convention center and everything. And they do a lot of like UFC, MMA kind of stuff. And there's like a WNBA team there and all that. Anyway, so me, front of house, and the lighting director all were called in from Nashville. And so I don't really know what I'm walking into, but I told Frank, if I can have this console, I'm good.
What's the console?
I know you were wanting to get into that. It was the Avid venue.
Okay. So you're going back a little bit because
it was the bigger one. Was
it Profile or D-Show?
Oh, we've got those.
I would I don't remember which one it
That's
was.
fine. We literally have both of those at our warehouse right now.
I'm sure you do.
And you're just kind of going with what you're comfortable with.
Going with what I'm comfortable with. And I had called a buddy of mine at a church here in town, and because it had been a little while since I'd been on one of those desks for anything. And I said, can I come by for a few hours and just, basically get my sea legs back? Because it's not what I wasn't concerned about the mix itself. I was more concerned about where is this routed, and like that, the more technical aspect of working on a console. But anyway, so I got up there and found out that the console that I was going to have, that couldn't fit into the room I was going to be mixing in.
Oops.
And so I was like, well, what is it? And it was a Yamaha, I think it was an even older desk that I hadn't worked on in even longer. And I said, what am I going to do? They can't fit the console I want in the room. And
you can't just magically tell them make a room bigger.
Exactly. And the purpose of doing that was the front of house guy's name is Dave Bechtel. He requested the same Avid desk, and he and I talked and said, okay, if we have mirroring rigs and we need to communicate on something, we'll know exactly what's going on. Everything's labeled the same, everything's routed the same, that type of thing. So that didn't happen, and got the Yamaha desk, and it wound up being fine. But my assistant, his name was Nick, was second to none. He runs all of the broadcast audio for the MMA and WMA stuff, or WNBA, excuse me. And he gave me a piece of advice going back to your actual question. He said, I know you're used to working in the studio where you can take your time and you get sounds and, takes and all that kind of stuff. He said, embrace the chaos. He said, because it's going to happen. And if you try to fight it, it will always win and it'll eat you.
So you have to kind of trust your gut.
You just go.
Take what comes at you.
And because it's live television, there's always mistakes. And, could be a missed cue, could be, this or that. And, but it was an adrenaline rush for sure. And when we got done with it, and the director who was in the video production room next door yelled, cut or fade to black. I was exhausted because it was like 2 hours of very intense focus. And I had not only my assistant who was with me the whole time, I had what's called a reader, and she's on the comm system for cues. And I had a script of the show, but she's reading me the script of the show. This person's coming up next, cue their mic, and they have a track, or they live piano for, the talent portion of things, or, whatever. And so you just hold on to the horse as best you can, and, it's like being on a horse without a saddle. You're just doing the best you can. And, we got through the night, and it, like any live event, it does have its mishaps, some of which we only recognize because we know what it should have been.
Sure.
Some are more glaring. And
it's like if you play the wrong note, just own it. Go with it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and I made the mistake the next day. Why I did this, I don't know. I made the mistake the next day of getting on Twitter for a minute. Why I wanted to do that.
That is always a mistake.
It's always a
You can only go on Twitter when you're happy and healthy and full, not when you need affirmation.
So, and I wasn't even looking for affirmation. What I was more looking for was like, what was kind of the fan response, to the show. And there was some, a lot of positive. There was some negative, as people are wont to do on social media and just complain and, whatever. But there was one thing that people were commenting on in a negative way.
You're never supposed to read the comments, right?
Oh, I know. There was one thing that someone mentioned, and that was a negative aspect on the show that they didn't know it, but they were blaming me for. They didn't know who they were blaming, but that what wound up being me. And I'm like, I know what happened. And I'm like, that is so not correct. And it's not me trying to, and I can't really elaborate on it, but it's not me trying to shirk responsibility, because I made 2 mistakes that I knew of, because I came home that night and I watched the Peacock recording of it. So I knew.
Did you have to order Peacock to watch it?
No, we had it.
Okay.
And so I knew that there was a cue that was called wrong to me. And there was one thing that I made a mistake on. And, but the thing that was the most commented on, I was like, not me.
Yeah. You had nothing to do with that.
But people don't know that.
Sure.
And, when people don't know anything about a production or how a production works, the things that they complain about are often, or I would probably say 9 times out of 10, have zero context or even an understanding for how the process works.
It's kind of like when the band sucks, everybody turns around and looks at the mix engineer. They're like, he's like, I can't make the guitarist play the right notes. I don't know what you want to do.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's very much that.
Or the pastor never turns on his mic, and everyone assumes it's the sound guy's fault.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I actually never thought about that as an option, but now I'm seeing that happen. Well, then what was your takeaway as you're looking at that and seeing that comment? Are you like, you know what? I just can't, you got to shrug this stuff off, or don't ever look to begin with, or
stay off Twitter.
Yeah,
that's probably
I would
the
probably
better.
say that's at the top of the list. It's never fun seeing work you've done get any kind of real harsh, because people are brutal on Twitter. I have a theory that most people who say the stuff that they do online would never say that to someone's face, or at least in that way.
Because then you'd have to back it up.
And if you do, you're a horrible person. I'm just going to throw that out there. But, I took it and I said, you know what? I know what happened, and the decision makers know what happened. The people that I'm accountable to, which would be the production company and then ultimately Miss America, like the corporate Miss America. And
Miss America herself even knows.
Yeah. So I just said, it's not worth it. It's basically the same posture I take when I read something online, and I'm like, that's politically divisive or, whatever. I'm just like, okay.
What was it like writing the madness and the hurricane? Like, his advice at the start was to not let it, don't fight it, just go with it.
Was it just like cocaine, or?
Never done cocaine.
I know you and Toby had that weekend.
Yeah, we had the bender. No, it was awesome. It was a thrill. It's like being on a roller coaster, quite frankly. And someone asked me that actually, I believe it was Terry Brown, who I mentioned earlier. She said, would you do it again? I said, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. It was just a blast. My heart is record making, but just because that's where I do a lot of my work doesn't mean that there aren't other areas that are very enjoyable, to go down.
It's like just because Bob Ross usually paints in oils, he's going to do a watercolor every now and then to stretch his legs.
I found out who was it? I was reading about someone on a movie set. They're certified as a Bob Ross painter.
You can get certified?
It was some kind of I forget who the actor was, but it was I love IMDb trivia. And so I was reading, about, behind the scenes stuff or whatever. And they said one of the major actors in this movie, who everyone would know, is some kind of certified Bob Ross painter and gave painting lessons in between the shooting schedule to actors and crew. Like, it didn't matter. It's just, I was like, certified Bob
It sounds
Ross.
like something Tom Hanks would do.
It does.
Yeah.
Maybe because he looks a little like Bob Ross. If anybody's going to play Bob Ross in a documentary, it's going to be Tom Hanks.
Yeah,
100%.
So my mind just keeps going back to this one question.
Yeah.
During the swimsuit section, does Covenant Eyes block that out?
There wasn't one.
Okay, so Covenant Eyes took care of that ahead of time and just removed it from the competition.
Yeah, there's a lot of ins. It's funny. I was there for like 4 days, about 4 days, and I was so laser focused, and just blinders as to everything else going on, and so there's a lot of decisions and ways of working. It's like any other corporate entity. There's political decisions, and there's things that you aren't privy to, nor was it really any of my business. But my understanding is that a few years ago they got rid of the swimsuit competition, portion of it. But before I knew that, my wife, who she'll roll with anything, she's a rock star. She said, "Oh, great, this is going to be awesome," because I said I've got I was told I did. I had two 70-inch televisions 3 feet from my face.
With Miss America in your face.
In the production room.
The most beautiful women in
she's
America.
Like, oh, great. Bikinis and on a 70-inch television. But, that portion of it is not even in the competition anymore.
Good. That's some progress there.
It's much more Christian now.
Yeah. Look, let's
I will say one thing. I didn't have much interaction with any of the girls, but when I did, for whatever reason, they were the coolest, most laid back, kindest group of people.
I'd imagine you'd have to be willing to be judged all the time. Like, you've got to have some amount of deep level of chill.
I feel like they all go on to start corporations and become major
and it makes
players
sense.
in industries and stuff.
A lot of pressure up on stage like that.
I mean, they're judged on poise.
Yeah, that puts you together.
But it didn't come across as anything but authentic, which I found very refreshing, because I didn't know quite what to expect going into that type of situation, because it's not a world that I'm real privy to. And that I was pleasantly surprised by that. And so was Dave Bechtel, the guy who ran front of house. It was like everyone we met, that was competing was like, they were actually just really cool. And we just had normal conversations with them a couple of times, and they're just kind of regular people.
That's a good juxtaposition. The people on Twitter as opposed to the professionals who show up to work,
Mm-hmm.
If you show up to a job, you're probably pretty cool.
Yeah.
Transitioning from that event, but also comparing it, you say that your biggest love is record making. So what is the kind of differences personally that you feel like the biggest differences between studio and then live mixing? So you've got...
Yeah. Live mixing is something I've done just because I can. It's not something that I do a whole lot anymore. And I never really had a giant passion for it. Record making, because my first memory in life is at Bob's studio in LA when I was 4, and I was in the lounge playing ping pong with my aunt.
So this would be 1985.
Yeah, exactly. And I grew up in the studio, and I really enjoyed it. And so for me, I always had more of an attachment to seeing that process happen. But in the end, for me, it's about a song. That's all I care about.
Is the record making more gratifying, but the live mixing more fun because it is such an animal to ride?
No.
All studio recording, huh?
they're so different. And I'll be honest. I mean, if I was ever running sound at a church service or, something like that, it's not really the thrill. Miss America was a completely unique thing because it would be like running sound for Golden Globes or
the Grammys,
Grammys or, some kind of award show like that, where again, you're just holding on for dear life. There's a lot of planning and stuff. We didn't have that luxury. I had like 4 days, but the record making end of it is more just seeing or being a part of the journey of a song that starts on a piano and a vocal or a guitar and a vocal or an iPhone recording or whatever, something like that, that is then manifested into a real, something that someone can go get, type of thing. I've always been very attracted to that in the process of that. So, it's really not fair to compare them in that way.
Okay, since we are the Church Gear podcast, let's transition to gear for a second.
All right.
You're telling us about these Avid boards that you tried to get for your gig, but you ended up on a Yamaha. But you have a few pieces of sort of history in your studio because of, your family history. Mm-hmm. But you have a unique microphone. Yeah. Can you tell us about your microphone?
There's a mic that gets used a lot, and it's an old U47 Telefunken from, I don't know, mid-50s maybe. It's old. It's only been serviced once the whole time.
And the U47 is kind of the holy grail, or like one of the two holy grails.
Yeah, there's a few of them. You got the 47, you've got the 67,
251,
and the 251. Those are probably the
397, the 280,
the big three. But that one, there's a lot of
F-150
and F-150. Yeah.
Same thing, Blake.
It's the same one he worked on with that Ford commercial.
Exactly. So but yeah, a lot of people have sung on that mic, throughout the years. And Frankie,
do some name dropping. Come on.
I think Frankie did. I think Sinatra did. And I believe Neil Diamond did. And whoever else.
So how did
Carmen, probably.
Let's go back to Frank Sinatra. How did Frank Sinatra's voice go through your microphone?
I can't really say it's mine, for one thing.
Isn't it in your studio?
The microphone in your possession, in your family's legacy.
It is at Bob's now, and it just kind of, if I need it for a vocal, I'll just, mind if I grab the mic? Nope, take it. And
this is a mic you don't drop, though. You don't drop the mic.
No, you do not drop this mic.
You grab an SM57 if you need a mic drop.
Yeah, go grab a hammer. Sinatra.
Yes.
Was that the question? Sorry.
Yeah. So Sinatra's voice has been on this microphone.
So I think it has. Back in the 60s, Sinatra had asked Bob to write songs for a record that Sinatra was doing, or just submit songs. And he ended up writing a record, like the whole record, as opposed to just submitting some songs with a guy named Jake Holmes. And Sinatra loved it and wound up cutting it. My understanding is basically as it was written. And it's a very different record. It's a very unique record. Critically, it was, if I'm remembering this right, critically it was successful in terms of, Rolling Stone or, New York Times, whoever's going to be reviewing this stuff. But commercially, it didn't sell as well, I think, because it was so different. But it was the only record, I think, that Sinatra didn't sing with the orchestra live. And
why is that?
Why that happened, I actually don't know.
It's all conjecture. You weren't alive.
Yeah, I wasn't alive. And, a lot of this stuff I pick up just in the course of working with Bob. There'll be something mentioned. And a lot of times I'll just ask a question on it.
Overall, your uncle had some serious clout. People were very respective of him and his talent.
Yeah, there was, but you're also working with someone who people had not only a big amount of respect for, but in some circumstances, a healthy fear of.
Really?
Sure. And I can't say, I don't think Bob was afraid of him, at all, but, he was someone who was friendly with the mafia. And,
most people did not tell Sinatra no.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the that kind of thing. But my understanding is that it was the only record he did that he didn't cut the vocals live. So it's the only record that has isolated vocals that you can listen to just in solo.
On As the Story Goes, at least for our purposes, on this microphone.
Yes. Yes, I believe it was this mic.
Man, that is a nice piece of history right there. I bet you hear some stuff in casual conversation that most people would speak about in hallowed tones, but Bob's just like, oh yeah, and this thing was Sinatra.
Yeah, there are things that are spoken of simply because it was his life experience. It'd be like, oh, we went to Asheville a couple of weeks, whatever kind of thing. It's like, oh yeah, I was working on this album, and but it's not anything, bragging or anything like that. It just happens to be what his life experience has been. And for me, it's just not only is it fun to hear some of those stories because I'm in the same industry, but also don't tell me to wrap it up.
I was telling Blake to wrap it up.
Golly.
Because he has a healthy fear of me.
So rude.
Here's the thing. I 5 minutes into this quickly was like, okay, I need Ryan for about 6 more episodes because I've got about 300 more questions.
We can do a lightning round.
Oh my gosh. No. So here's where I would love to end on before we see you back.
All right. I know we didn't get to much gear.
Yeah, Toby, don't mess up your relationship with Ryan here.
He loves me.
Good, because I want him back.
I use an AMS reverb. I use an AMS delay. I have old Yamaha SPX 90s that are really grimy that I like. Innovonics compressors, DBX 160s.
All these live guys are like, how do you make this work?
1272 pre's from Brent Averill.
And we're not talking plugins. We're
Bryston
talking
amps, Westlake speakers. So anyway, sorry.
Oh, way to name drop there. Yeah, lightning round. Blake just heard wah.
Charlie Brown's teacher.
I mean, most of my life. So we typically end on a tech takeaway. You kind of actually sneaked one in earlier, but you've been doing a lot of projects. You've worked with a lot of accomplished people. So you've got some lessons from the fire. This is me, vamping to give you some time to think of what a takeaway would be. But essentially just if you had a weird tip, and I say weird because everyone knows best practices, what would that be? Like if you were a church tech, listening to this and you're like, hey, this will help you out on Sunday. And it could be a technical thing, could be philosophical, either way. The church tech tip of the day.
Don't get married to your ideas.
Dang, all right.
And can I expand on that?
Yes, please.
I had a situation where I was helping out a church where my wife and I were attending, and I was helping train some people to be able to run sound on Sunday morning. And their setup at the time, they didn't have an AVM system. So all of the monitoring was done from front of house. And I was working with one of the guys, and I would try to give them a lot of latitude, not only to screw up, but to figure out, okay, this is how this works. And I would always be a backstop, if you will. Like, I'm not going to let the whole thing fail, but in rehearsals, there's some latitude here. You can figure some stuff out. And he was, people were asking for some monitor tweaks, and he looked at me and he said, he got on the talkback and he said, why would you want that? And I forget what the response was from the stage, but my response to him was, it doesn't matter what you think they want. They're the singer or the player or whatever. Their monitor mix, who cares if it gets a great performance, if it gets a great, if they're able to feel the music and that kind of thing. So from that aspect of things, I don't care if someone just wants the rack tom. If that's what they get off on, great.
That's usually what I ask for when I'm playing guitar. Give me that rack tom.
Me, if I'm playing at church, I like it to sound like a record. It's my world. It's what I'm used to. I pan stuff around and all that. But I think just not getting married to a way of working or a way of it has to be this way, kind of thing. Being as flexible as you can be, because there's so many situations, especially in churches, where like there's a church that we attend and the turnover of the type of event that's happening there is so insane. No one even has the option to say, this is how we do it, this, blah, 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 blah. And what it allows them to do is basically to be able to do anything with excellence. And so, it could be anything from the setup to, mapping the IO. Like it could be anything. And, but in the end, the other thing I would say is it isn't about you. Really, it isn't. If we're all being honest with ourselves, the audio side of thing is an extremely thankless job. It really, really is. So the fulfillment really comes in yourself and doing a great job with that and the people, that you're helping. But your job is a facilitator so that the band and the singers and the speakers or whatever can do, what they need to do. And your job is to give them what they need. Nothing else, really. And it's a servant role. It really, truly is. You're not a rock star in that setting. Studio's a little bit different because there are engineers who are or producers who are like, this is what I do. If you like it, great. If not, fine. It's not going to break my heart kind of thing. Church is a little different than that. And I think it should be different than that, because it's not about my sound or.
I bet that is pretty different for you because you have worked with some countless amazing names. And then also it sounds like you're helping out a church. That's two different worlds.
Yeah. So. And I also help develop a lot of independent artists. And so that's another side of it, and they don't have the experience. And so they're really relying on me for a certain, delivery, that they need.
Isn't Joe Pesci though also a local worship leader at a small church?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Ryan, we can't thank you enough for coming on, man.
My pleasure.
This was fun.
Yeah, this was fun. There's about 1,000 different stories we'll pull out in the future, but appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, man. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. And hey, congratulations on surviving Sunday. If you happen to make it through next Sunday as well, join us again for your weekly Tech Breather.
Toby, you know what is a big name in my book, in my world?
Besides me?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Toby Walters 1 to 99, but then the big name is the early service. That's a big name, all caps. You know why I love the early service, Toby?
Please tell me more.
I love the early service because I get the best gear on Monday morning at 8:45, and I get to buy that gear for 2 whole days before it gets bought anywhere else. Isn't that sweet, Toby?
Where do you find that early service?
I find it at churchgear.com/early service.
And why do you have a country drawl all of a sudden?
When I'm trying to be persuasive, I just hit that southern drawl right there. Now it's coming in further.
That is deeply disappointing. You're fired.
Brian, fix that in the mix.